Did you even know what Zoom was 4 months ago?
What's that?
Did you even know what Zoom
Not
was 4 months ago?
Probably not for. Yeah, did we know? I don't even remember now. It's so a part of our life.
I don't think I knew what Zoom was.
All right, let's get started. So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. We were off last week because of, in light of everything, and just out of respect, we felt like it was just time to step back and focus on what is going on in our world. Not that we haven't been focused on it, but so now we're back and we're live, and we're going to Tim. So when we started these live shows,
We're 2 months in.
What's that?
I said we're 2 months in. We've had a pretty wide variety of guests over the last 2 months.
Yes, interesting guests from a countess to a restaurateur to
NFL players.
Yep, Howard Lorber. So yeah, some interesting, really interesting people, and yeah, decorators and talk show host. But our first show, Tim, was on April 10th, and it was you and I doing a market update, going back over first quarter essentially and talking about what we were in. So actually, one day shy of 2 months today, we're going to do a market update and talk about where we are, what we're experiencing, give you some stats and numbers, and talk about where we think we're going. Obviously, as we've experienced in the last 60 to 90 days, things that we never could have thought or dreamed of have happened. So we're gonna tell you what we're experiencing, seeing, and feeling, and also give some numbers and go from there. All right. So
if there's any questions, or if we need to dive a little bit deeper into anything, this is stuff that we obviously, Stephen and I talk every day, every morning, every night, every afternoon. But if there's any other questions, just let us know, because we'll go into further detail about it.
Yeah. So yeah, send your comments and questions. Thanks, Tim. All right. So with that, you mentioned we speak every morning. So every morning, every weekday for the last, I think we started March 18th. That's when we came out and started when we were in quarantine. Our team does a morning meeting, 9 a.m. Zoom meeting every morning. And what we started doing very early on is every day someone is assigned and they have to bring inspiration. And it can be anything, and I've talked about this on different shows that we've done, anything from something cute that made them smile, or something deep, or whatever it is, but it's just something that brings inspiration to that person and to the team. So my friend Amy Holtzman, my dear friend, who sent me something very early on during this quarantine, the What If poem, which I posted and talked about and really set my mind, put me on the right track to what I think is not every day, but had a clear, healthy mindset. So she sent something yesterday that I want to share. And it's quick, but it'll just set the tone. What if 2020 isn't canceled? What if 2020 is the year that we've been waiting for? A year so uncomfortable, so painful, so scary, so raw, that it finally forces us to grow. A year that screams so loud, finally awakening us from our ignorant slumber. A year we finally accept the need for change, declare change. A year we finally band together instead of pushing each other further apart. 2020 isn't canceled, but rather the most important year of them all. And that's Leslie Dwight. So that moved me. You wouldn't think of a market update starting with inspiration, but again, we're living in unprecedented times, and maybe that is the whole point, that we're here to be successful, do the best for our clients and friends, to make money, all of that. But in the end, we have to focus on truly what's important. So little silver lining, maybe that's what this year's about. Okay, perfect segue. Let's jump into some numbers. So Tim, do you have the sales number? I'm just going to give some simple numbers for the last 2 months to give you an idea and compare them year to date. So contracts signed, this is new residential deals that were signed in Manhattan. In April 2020, 216 new deals, new contracts were signed. This is in comparison to 2019, where 1,075 were signed. So literally 20% of what was signed the previous year in April. In May, that number went down to 159 signed contracts as compared to 982 signed contracts in 2019. So it's 16% of the year prior. Tim, it doesn't surprise me. Go ahead.
So I think we're seeing, obviously, April and May were the heavy months of the pandemic. And that's why I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that, year over year, when we look back to 2019, we're seeing an almost 80% decrease in contracts signed. That being said, prior to the pandemic, we did have a strong first quarter in New York City real estate. So January and February numbers were up over 2019. So when we look year to date, the overall year is 20% down. So it makes the story a little bit better, but obviously there's no hidden secret that April and May have been quieter for signed contracts.
It's remarkable that we're only 20% down year to date. Shows how strong first quarter was.
And that's kind of what everyone thought, coming off of February, going into March. Our team had things ready to go. We were really expecting the spring to be a strong market. I think mortgage rates were coming to a point where they were getting to, a really favorable level for buyers. I think sellers were finally realizing, where they needed to be to sell. And this was all coming off of 2019. And we had a robust first, January and February were pretty strong. So I think that's what adds to, and keeps the April and May numbers, balances them out, a little bit better, and makes the overall story.
And I'll say the April numbers, 216 as compared to May, again, these are signed contracts, new deals going into contract, are higher. And that's because April, you had the pipeline of what we worked on in February and March that was some of it getting signed in April. April pipeline pretty much dried up. So the numbers were less, although it's 216 compared to 159, not so terrible. And I'm going to go into closed sales, but what we experienced and had been experiencing is in May, there was mid-May to end of May, we were really beginning to feel this push, this uptick, this energy of more calls, interested in listing properties, buyers, what's out there. Really, everybody came back and it was like a push to get back. And then that obviously came to a halt the last 2 weeks with George Floyd and the protest. And now we feel like it's coming out a little bit. That's just the energy that we're feeling, the calls and the interest that we're getting. So let me just give one more stat, and that's closed sales. April 2020, there were 1,549 closed contracts, properties that closed, as compared to 2019, 3,930. So literally a 40% of the previous year, 60% decrease. In May, there were 1,337 closings, as compared to the year prior, May, 2,772, and it's just shy of 50% of the same. So, but again, these are closings. Some of this a lot of it could be new development, things that were in contract before COVID, things that could have been in contract, new development for a year, 2 years. It just happened to be, this is now when they're closing. So, anyway, that's any points on that?
I think that's sort of the last April and May. And I think you kind of touched on what we were seeing in the last 2 weeks of May as a team. But I think it's super important now to talk about, what we're seeing kind of currently and going forward, because I think that is part of the reason I think the numbers obviously are low in April and May is because people were sitting on the sidelines and waiting. And, not to get back to your inspiration, but I think what 2020 is going to make people realize is, they may be in a different location right now, or they may have taken their family somewhere else, or they may be making that change that wasn't, necessarily in the cards, or wasn't in the cards immediately.
Yeah.
And now they may be, buying that apartment that they were going to wait on, or, we're seeing a lot of different angles of this conversation. And I think it's super interesting to talk to our client base, which honestly, they're currently all over the place, but everyone has a different story. Lives continue to go on. And I think that's really kind of where we are now. So I think if we...
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's go deeper on that. So with Tim, you're so right. It's about change right now. I'd say that I'll say that everyone is thinking about change. What's next? What it looks like? What did you dream of? What do you want for yourself? Is this the right apartment? Is it too small? Is it too big? Should we move out of the city? I've been asked, I've been on a number of panels, and I've done some presentations to boards, and we've obviously done all of our live shows, and we talk, our team, all the time. Anyone that I believe that was on the cusp, everyone asks, well, is New York over? Is everybody leaving? Is it the mass exodus? Anyone I believe that was on the cusp and considering leaving, this probably helped make their decision. So definitely people are leaving. That's obviously one side of it. But I'll say something, and I've said it before, New York, it is still New York City. New York, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It might look different. It may take some transitional time. New York City is not done. It's New York City. Yes, we have to get back to some sense of normalcy. Yes, that may take some time, but it's not done. I truly, in my heart.
Stephen, I heard this theory, and again, it ties into the change, but I was speaking with this guy last week, and he had this, he spent 35 years on Wall Street. Now he's in real estate. And he was talking to me about his New York theory. And I think it's super interesting because he's seeing the commercial real estate and a lot of vacancies in commercial real estate that are happening in New York City right now. But his theory is that these tech companies are going to be, they're currently shopping, and they're going to be scooping up a lot of these,
interesting. Yeah.
prime real estate areas in New York City. And it's a really exciting theory that New York City could become a huge tech hub, in the years to come, and really bring in that vibrant, young enthusiasm that I think New York City could really benefit from. So
yeah, it's true. Listen, as I said, it's New York City. There's a vortex here, similar to Berlin. It just draws. There are certain cities that draw. And they, over the generations and decades, they shift. But you're right. Maybe it's a new look, a new soul to New York City. Or maybe some would say maybe we'll get our soul back. Whatever it is. But I think that's really interesting, right? Tech, hedge funds coming in and maybe buying up blocks of properties from developers. Who knows?
Yep.
Many different angles and how it could look. Going back to those that the outside markets are New York suburbs, the Westchesters, the second home markets, or the Scarsdales, the Rise, and then second home markets of the Hamptons, Florida, Palm Beach, Miami, the Catskills. We are seeing Connecticut. These markets are strong. They're doing very well right now. That is the people that are leaving and are looking either for their primary home or to have a second property to go to because they experienced what this was like. And maybe they didn't have the second property or they had to rent. So those markets, yes, are definitely doing well. And I think within New York City, the other, that's how COVID has affected and changed a market that was flat for a while. Some of those neighborhoods that I mentioned and areas that I mentioned. In New York City, I think that, and we've touched on this before, townhouses, again, it's been a flat market for a number of years. I think there will be an uptick. and re-engaged interest in townhouses. I also believe some of our smaller boutique buildings, where if you're concerned about, you know, a lot of the physical contact, we have, you know, properties where there's only 11 units in the entire building, and that may be of new interest, and there could be a premium on that, as well as outdoor space.
And I also think buildings are, you know, we've talked about buildings are having to readdress amenities and what amenities are important.
Yeah.
You know, amenities that may have been important a year ago, people's thoughts are changing. You know, so I think that's really interesting. In
What do you think? Give an example. What do you think? Where before it could have been a pet spa or or an area to congregate.
Is the building pool like,
right.
You know, or do people, you know, and we don't know what New York City gyms are going to look like, but do people want more private workout space rather than you know, a common space, stuff like that? I think, you know, and I think we've talked about it. I think there's a lot of, again, unknown and changes, but I think in a lot of people's decisions that they're going to make, they're still, you know, collecting all these learnings and experiences. Some people have never spent time outside the city, so they're, you know, weighing that out. And I think there's a lot of big factors that we still don't know the answers to.
I've heard, so along those lines, I've heard of in certain buildings, the staff are getting creative, and there's online, you know, private wine tastings, and they're decorating. They now decorate your door if you have a birthday or a graduation. So things that were, you know, people are getting creative, and things that were not necessarily done before.
Yep.
I want to talk about where we are with in the phase. So phase one, we're in New York City. We're in phase one, which construction has come back.
Curbside retail.
Right, curbside retail, restaurants, not in dining, but outdoor dining. We've been told that residential real estate will be back. We've obviously been working, and we'll go into some of the deals and what we've been working on and our numbers.
Phase two, which we still don't know what day that phase two will start, but that's when officially residential real estate can start, I guess.
Resume some type of showings, obviously limited. I don't think we'll have open houses the way we used to, not initially anyway. But people coming in, you have to wear gloves, you know, you have to, or a mask, and maybe being tested by the doorman for fever. So the number, you know, I've heard June 22nd. We'll know, obviously, as it gets closer. But what we've been experiencing, as I said, the last 2 weeks, it was disrupted, but we felt this uptick and that things were going on. So during this period, we're going to go into this once we can get things, we can put things on the market, but really once we can start showing, and we're holding back right now so that we can put things on right when we can actually start showing and get virtual tours done, which I think there will be more of. And rather than, you know, people may do a lot more online. We've done that. Tim, you've sold a property sight unseen by virtual tour, and talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think from both sides, I think our coaches, Tom Ferry, they've really hammered home to us the concept of being ready to market and sell apartments without ever going in the apartment. And the truth is we will eventually go into the apartment, but we have to have the basket of marketing tools to be able to show a buyer the apartment without them coming in. And I think the days of, you know, seeing 18 apartments in person are probably over. But, you know, it's no, I think people will actually, you know, always have to walk and touch and feel those final apartments, just because these purchases are, you know, big purchases for people.
But there could be a focus as to they're not coming back 15 times, it's like, okay, we can get into it maybe 3 times. You really need to get done what you need to get done.
But it is amazing. It is when you're on a Zoom tour or a virtual tour and you're focusing on how is the light, how is the view, is the view, like it's one thing to hear that the apartment faces south, but when you're on the video and you can see the afternoon light, you can get a feel for it. I'm not saying it's, going to rule out every in-person showing, but I think it definitely helps. And I think we can do a lot more. And I think the responsibility to listing brokers to virtually show and, the importance of photos and videos and guided tours, that's all really going to be a huge part of our futures.
Yeah. And this is how we're adapting, as everyone has to adapt and pivot if they want to survive.
And I think also transactionally, one thing, we've noticed as a team is, this our morning Zoom call, we never had a team meeting every day. And I think, we take advantage of what's going on. And now for 45 minutes, an hour, Stephen wants 2 hours sometimes. But, we're always
only when I'm pontificating and reading, brilliant statements.
But I think the importance of streamlining our business is really going to, I think, again, people have realized that we can wire commission checks. So do we really need to mail them to an address in Brooklyn and then back to headquarters and then back to your personal home and you get the check in 11 days? You can wire it and have the commission check a lot sooner. So I think things like that.
There will definitely be efficiency that comes out of this.
Yep.
So we've been fortunate. We've put some properties in contract during this time, 2 of which were sight unseen. In one case, Tim had a buyer and it was all sight unseen Zoom. In another case, it was someone that lived in the building, knew the building, and so did not need to see the property. They were buying a larger apartment, which we had on the market. So we've put things in contract. Thank God, we've had closings and virtual closings because we work with good attorneys and are creative and get things done. And then the other is we're bringing a number of properties, as I started to say, onto the market. We've, through Zoom and talking to people that were thinking about it prior or then thinking about it actually during this period, we'll probably be bringing on a number of listings, 10 new listings when the market, quote, opens up. And I'd say that because I think that once, let's call it June 22nd or second phase, once we can actually, it's officially open. Again, people are doing things like this now and online and looking, but really officially open and can see things in person, that there, I believe, is going to be a lot of inventory that's coming onto the market that was held up.
And I think it's also important to note that, of those 10 listings, they range from 600,000 to, 30 million.
28 million.
28 million, sorry. But I also think the stories of those people range. Like some people are downsizing, some people are upgrading, some people are, they were moving to New Jersey anyway. And this, now they decided to get the yard during this. So I think the stories of each one of those.
That's actually a great point. This is not all everyone's just fleeing. It's all different. It's some they decided now, some are upgrading. We have a client who we love who is pregnant and staying in New York City, but, needs a bigger apartment. And, talked about looking before and put it on hold. And now life cycles still happen. So that's a really good point, Tim. Excellent point. So
I think on the buy side, Stephen.
What's that?
I think on the buy side, I think that's really going to be interesting because, I think that's been super important for us over the last 10 weeks is like keeping in contact with our clients and keeping them up to date on schedules and deadlines and dates and when we think everything's going to proceed. But in our conversations with all of the bankers and mortgage brokers that we, talk to all the time, I think they consistently reiterate to us that the applications for pre-approval.
Pre-approval for mortgages. Yeah, right.
And people are filling out their revenue forms. So they have the 2 documents ready to go. They're doing their online searching. So, when we can go and start showing, people are ready to go.
Yeah.
And, do we know that July and August are going to be gangbuster busy? Not definitely, but a lot of signs are showing it.
Yeah. No, listen, everything we're going on, as we said earlier, we've been hit with two things in the last 2-3 months that we never expected or, might come. And good will, God willing, come from all of it. But with that said, you're right. We don't know. I've heard some people say that summer will be the spring market that we didn't have. I'm not sure what it will look like, how much will go into contract, but I do believe a lot will come onto the market. In terms of pricing, we're obviously putting pricing on things. We're trying to adjust, but we won't know till we're actually in it. And I've heard a range of different prices, but anything that I've heard, none of it is that the market is completely dropping out. And I pray that that's true, because we all own real estate in New York City. There will be some price adjustment. Similar, we always talked about, God, over the last 2 years, where we talked about sellers and buyers and coming to a meeting of the minds. And, finally we got to that place. I think there may be more of that. And that just makes us, it's what we're here to do, and to negotiate and get to a meeting of the minds where sellers still believe they're this price and maybe buyers are saying this, and maybe it's somewhere in between, but it's our job to get them there and get a deal done.
But I do think you always say, like, the importance of pricing correctly is going to be, because again, if we're coming on the market and competing with listings that have been on since pre-COVID, and then things that are coming on the market, I think there is going to be demand, but I think the importance to price correctly, if people want to sell, I think is going to be, one of the key factors. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. All right. I think we've touched on most. Anything else to add?
No, I'm loving these comments about all the virtual margarita classes everyone's doing in their building. But I think one thing that we've touched on the different markets, and I think that's really become a theme. I think we touched upon the surrounding areas of New York City, and I just think, again, people are really starting to think about is it what their living situation looks like. So I think we've been in touch with brokers in Westchester and the Hamptons. I've done some rentals in the Hamptons, and the rental market in the Hamptons has been crazy, because I think everyone wanted that break.
There were a lot of our clients have come to us who, if they don't own there already, we were dealing with a lot of rentals in the Hamptons.
But then, all over the country, I think,
Well, I've had two people, someone's actually moving to California that we are helping advise and put in contact with a broker there, and people in Florida as well. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. They're thinking about this, and we're working with them because we've worked with them over the years, or we're now selling their property, so they need help on the other side. Mm-hmm. But you're right.
So just what the ingredients look like. I think back to what you said about your client, who's out in Santa Fe, who wants to keep roots in New York City, but it might not be the same setup of what they had previously, because maybe they want to shift their time spent.
That's right. Yeah, that is the case, actually. Yeah.
There's a lot of different situations. And I think each one of these conversations are different, but it's making us as real estate brokers kind of almost become, that much more knowledgeable and put people in touch with people in different markets, even more so, because I think, again, people are really thinking about, and they're waiting. That's the other thing. Like, the school decision is going to be a huge decision. I'm fascinated by the subway system of New York City. Like, I just don't think the system's been tested yet. So it's like, what's that going to look like? And that could play a big part on people. On a side note, we learned about those scooters. Someone was talking about the scooters that have taken trend in the city, almost like the city bike system, but those scooters where you can just jump on them and then jump off and leave it wherever you are. So again, it's going to be New York City's going to be different, and you said it different. How?
But we will adapt.
Of course.
So yeah, I took Lily to get a bike the other day, and she needs a bigger bike, and I have to get myself a bike. All the bikes are sold out, but there was a motorized scooter there, and for a moment I thought I should buy this, but I didn't. All right, well, this has been great, Tim. I'm glad we got to get all the information together and share it. Thank you, everyone, for joining. All right, Tim has an exciting on Friday. What's Friday, the 12th?
Yeah. Friday, the 12th, I'm going to have Joey Wolfer from Wolfer Wines join me. And Joey is a restaurateur. She owns a clothing store. She owns the Vineyard in Sagaponack. And she's just been an amazing example of someone that has adapted during this time and, taken
If you see, talk about pivot. If you drive by Wolfer Estates, where normally you'd stop to buy a case of wine or cases of wine, and they have pickup, and they have all the cars lined up, and they have a DJ playing, and talk about adapting and pivoting. Really clever.
We'll be talking to her on Friday, and then the conversation continues. So we have more people lined up in the coming weeks, which will be exciting.
Yeah. So tune in this Friday, May 12th, 2:00. Tim will be with Joey Wolfer. As always, we're here for you. Any thoughts, questions, just reach out. And thanks everyone for joining. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.
Bye, guys.